We are live. What are you drinking? Is that iced coffee?
Just ice water.
Yeah. Thank you for joining us. If you are seeing us for the very first time on fstoppers.com on the homepage, we literally just got that put together. You can click over and view this on YouTube, and you can actually see a live chat and be a part of a live chat with us. It's pretty fun to do. While we have been trapped inside for this quarantine, Patrick and I have promised to make daily or nightly coronavirus journal videos where we just kind of talk about what's going on in our lives, interesting news, and we usually argue with each other about strange things like whether or not I can do jiu-jitsu. We're starting a little earlier tonight because there's a big UFC fight tonight. And
I have a couple clips about that.
Yeah, one of the fighters got infected, which is pretty crazy. So, are you ready to get into this, Patrick? Do you want to talk about the thumbnail and the title of this entire video here?
Why don't we get back to the basics and read the coronavirus numbers? We broke 4 million yesterday.
We did.
You know, as we go on with this, it seems like the numbers kind of grow quicker and quicker, but the world has been in quarantine to some degree for the last month at least.
Yep.
So maybe they will slow down, but I mean, look at that. We almost have 100,000 more in one day. I don't know if that's a lot, but I can remember a month or so ago, we've almost been doing this for 2 months. Yeah. I remember 100, I watched it go from 200 to 300,000 one night, and that took several days to get there, and then just boom, in one day, we're doing 100,000 new cases.
Yep. Let's look at the United States real quick.
I keep hearing the United States is still having near record-breaking days. Like, we've plateaued maybe, but we are still very, very high.
I don't fully understand that because when I look at the charts, I'm not seeing that. Maybe a day or two ago, we did hit a really high number. 1.3 million cases total, 80,000 deaths. And then if we come down all the way down here...
We have that same weird pattern, too,
we do.
That we've seen in many other countries.
Yeah, it seems like on Sundays they just don't report as much. But, yeah, it seems like we've kind of plateaued a little bit, I suppose. All right, let's talk about Trump potentially getting the coronavirus. News keeps coming out that everyone surrounding Trump and his
staff,
the Secret Service.
Secret Service now?
What were they saying? His valet got it the other day, and
I didn't hear that.
I didn't quite understand what valet meant because I thought valet would mean somebody that drives you around, but then it said the person who brings him his food came down with it.
It's like a chauffeur or a butler. Do they still call people
like
butlers? That. Can you have a butler?
I have no idea.
Socially acceptable?
So what I haven't even seen this article before. This is that 11 Secret Service members.
I don't know that this video, I haven't seen the video, but I don't know if the video talks about this, but if you scroll down, that first paragraph, I think, it just says that, you know, Ivanka, like her assistant, has now come down with a positive testing. Yeah. 11 Secret Service members have been confirmed. Today's Saturday, so yesterday, towards the middle or end of the day, we learned that Mike Pence's main assistant, who's married to that crazy guy,
yeah,
she has it now. And so it just feels like a lot of people inside the White House and people behind the scenes that are in a lot of these staff meetings are now being, you know, confirmed with COVID. Yep. And so you can remember not too long ago, it might have been a month and a half ago, we were all thinking, is Trump going to announce tonight that he has it? There was like one specific day or two where the world was wondering, does Trump have it? I think he gave a couple press conferences and he sounded hoarse and he sounded like he could be sick.
Yeah.
And all of that has kind of ended, but now we are back to that same place where people around him are getting sick.
Yeah, I mean, you know, this kind of goes back to our argument either last night or the night before. I can't even keep track of when we've talked about certain things. Every day just seems the same in my life right now. But just this idea that you can hide from this or you can't hide from this and you might as well just live your life outside of fear. And there's a good chance you'll get it, but there's a good chance you'll get it even if you're trying to quarantine yourself.
Somebody had a good kind of insight or rebuttal to our ramblings last night when we got in a little bit of an argument about, what are you going to do? You're just going to stay in this house all day? I'm ready to go out and work. Did we just lose internet?
Uh-oh,
What just clicked?
I don't know.
Felt like we lost power.
Let's see if internet works. Internet is working.
Okay, I saw some stuff click off, so. Yeah. And basically the idea he had was, this is the reason why we can't just say, go back to work if you feel comfortable, go out and shop if you feel comfortable, and if you don't feel comfortable, stay at home, because unless you're a single person, that would work. But almost everybody, or 50% or 75% of our nation, is in relationships. We have kids, we have spouses, we have family members, we might have elderly that we're taking care of. So the idea that like you could just kind of go out and work if you feel good and you feel comfortable about it, you're willing to take the chance, still doesn't totally make sense because you're putting other people's lives in jeopardy. And we are dealing with it, you and me, and maybe the two other people in this house. But imagine if you're, a normal family and you have five or six people living in your house. Sure. You're Peter Hurley. You have your wife and kids, and you have his, his mother-in-law.
Yeah.
It's a lot more complicated to where
I agree.
The conversation we're having is, should you go out and live your life because you feel okay? But for many other people, it's like, no, maybe you should all quarantine for as long as possible.
I agree. For those people who, need to do that, they could. But in our situation, we happen to be roommates at this time. We both own other houses back in the States. If you were afraid, you could just go live in your house in the States until you felt safe in 2 or 3 years.
I mean, I kind of was thinking about that today.
Right.
It was 85 today, and it felt like 95. I woke up sweating. I made breakfast and cooking in the kitchen.
Hold on, woke up sweating. You have air conditioning in your room.
I mean, I woke up and stepped outside, and it's like, it was so hot today. I'm burning up right now. It's humid. This feels like one of the hottest, it's the hottest day we've had in the year, for sure. But I was like, man, I looked at Charleston. It was 65 degrees there. They're saying it's snowing in Boston.
Yeah, but you're not going to go outside anyway, so what does it matter?
I would go outside if it was cold. A lot of the reason I avoid going outside.
It's dangerous outside. There's people and virus. You can still go
outside and not come in contact with people.
I don't know. It sticks to the bottom of your shoes.
I don't worry about that. I'm just thinking we are quarantined here and can't leave because of orders of Puerto Rico. And it's so freaking hot outside that if I go out past 8 a.m., from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m., it's miserable out there. But when I'm seeing it's snowing in Boston, I'm like, man, that'd be amazing. You just take a bike out and go right around the parks and stuff. That would be great.
Maybe so. I don't know. But back to my point, I think that is certainly a fair argument. If you have old people who you can't separate from living in your home, then of course you shouldn't live that life. But I've been thinking a lot, especially yesterday and today, a lot about testing. We've been hearing about every single person that comes into contact with Trump is daily tested.
Yeah.
Mike Pence's assistant was tested one day, she was fine, next day she had it. I think we're going to get to a clip about that in a second.
Yeah.
And it just goes to show you that I think you could be relatively safe. You could live a normal life if you had access to these tests. Like with the UFC, I'm friends with somebody who works behind the scenes with the UFC with this big fight that's coming up tonight. And he's been posting videos of himself getting nose swabbed and finger pricked for antibodies and all this stuff. And imagine if you could just pay for that. And this is the other thing that I was thinking. I also saw this article today that was talking about, I think the UK is about to implement a 14-day mandatory quarantine for people who fly in. Part of me would have thought they already had that, but
we have that in Puerto Rico. But what does that even mean?
Right, I don't think they can enforce it at all. Maybe they would enforce it more in the UK than they do here. But imagine if instead of that, They simply said, you have to take 3 tests for the next 3 days or whatever after taking a flight and charge a premium for those tests. And that money could go towards the greater good. You know?
3 tests. What does that mean?
Well, if you are on a flight and you are sitting next to somebody with it, do you think a test would pick it up when you get off the flight? It's already in your nose, or do you think it has to metastasize or whatever it's called
I would
for a
think,
little while?
I mean, I don't know. Do we have this data yet? I would think it's going to take a few days for it to come
Well,
back
that's what I was
positive.
saying. Like maybe you would require, it would take a few days, and you'd have to test for a few days in a row. But you know, if these tests cost, like we learned our little test that we had was $10. I don't know how much the nose swab test is. And the weird thing is, I think with the UFC, they still were doing some nose swab test, the deep nose swab, because I saw them do it, but then they had to still ship it off. I thought we had little computer boxes that could tell you within 15 minutes if you've got it or not.
There was something about Microsoft guy. What is his name?
Bill Gates?
Bill Gates. He was saying that they had found that they can do a self-swab test, that patients can do it themselves. We had this video on. We had this video on like 2 months ago,
Right.
but I don't know if that's a thing yet. It seems like we're still not coming close to testing. But the antibody test, you just throw that out. Like that's not useful at all for anyone flying in, unless they were already midway through their problem, you know, or their.
But my point is like, let's say someone like me is ready to get out, and I have the money. I'm willing to pay a premium to go to the UK or something on vacation during this time. And the UK is like, look, we don't want you here because you could be bringing the virus here. But maybe they could charge a few $100s a test or something, much more than it would normally cost. And then as long as I pass the test during the amount of time needed or whatever, boom, now I'm free. And the same thing would go for, you know, I want to go to jiu-jitsu class, I go to jiu-jitsu class, but then I want to see my parents who are in their 60s. Before I go and see them, I got to go pay a premium to take a test.
It just seems like that's going to be prohibitively expensive. Like you're going to have to spend $14. You're going to have to buy a hotel for 14 days. You're going to have to do a test for 14 days at least.
Why for 14 days? That's the whole point. I'm saying
The
I would do
14
the
days
test
it
instead
takes,
of that.
But it takes 14 days for you to even show symptoms.
Yeah, I don't care about symptoms. I care about having the virus.
I mean, people here are saying it takes 7 to 14 days to even show the virus. If you got the virus on the flight, I don't think for the next 3 days you will necessarily test positive from the nose swab, would you?
So you're saying that there's potentially a week time, because you know we've heard that maybe you're most contagious before you even show symptoms. That could be within the first 2 weeks.
Yeah.
You're saying that there's an entire week where the virus is growing inside of me, but I'm not contagious?
I don't know. I just don't think 3 days is going to cut it. I don't think you're going to...
Well, that's what we got to figure out. Like that's obviously what we would have to figure out.
And then the other question, and this is a question I would have for these smaller countries that have universal health care, is places like Sweden, are they going to be okay with you coming in and spending the extra money to do the tests and quarantine, but then now you're on their soil and you're their liability? What happens when you're a foreigner in another country that has these universal health cares? I thought a lot of people act like, oh, dude, you're cool. We will take you in and help you.
Yeah, I think so.
But at some point, you as a government have to say, coronavirus patients are extremely expensive. That's why we're giving so much money to each patient in the United States. Not only do we not want you here, but we don't want to have to take care of you if you get sick. And there's a chance that even if you do the quarantine and you're asymptomatic, you don't have the virus, if you get sick from a local in that country, you now are the responsibility of that country, right?
Well, I mean, this is the whole deal with socialized health care, and should we be paying for the health care of illegal immigrants in the United States and everything?
Just seems like a slippery slope, because if there was a country out there like Singapore, and I don't know that Singapore has universal health care, but if there was a place where it seems like they have it under control, and all of a sudden everyone's like, I'm going to go there because I'm tired of dealing with this, I could see where they would have to change their policies, right?
I don't know.
Maybe it's a money thing. Maybe if you say, I'm willing to spend 10 grand to go through all these steps and to be in your society, maybe they would say, well, 10 grand
I don't know
would
why
be
it
enough.
needs to be 10 grand. And I think
Well, because we know if you go on a ventilator, that costs the hospital on average like $37,000. That's what Medicare is paying them.
that's what they receive. But yeah,
I think the idea is they receive it because it's an expensive. Once you go in a hospital, you're there for 1 to 5 weeks, and if you're on a ventilator, I mean that's a lot of resources.
I
so
agree.
I'm suggesting 10 grand. It's just a number I made up, but there's got to be a point where a foreign, country would say, what price will we allow you to come in, and if you get sick, it's still worth having you here.
I don't know.
Under normal circumstances, they're probably just like, you're visiting.
Yeah, I
If you
understand.
get sick, you'll just go in the ER for a day. It's not a big deal. This is a whole different situation.
I agree, but I think very few countries have completely closed their borders, and at this point, it seems like everyone's slowly starting to open up. So I don't know if it's just as simple as saying like, oh, we just don't want anyone to travel here until we have a vaccine. That could be years or never.
They're saying universal health care doesn't usually cover foreigners unless it's an emergency. Well, guess what?
Yeah.
COVID-19 is probably the epitome of an emergency.
Yeah, it would be for somebody at high risk for sure.
Do you want to go to this clip that I saw this trending this morning, and people were really upset with Trump. And it's
This one?
Yep. Let's see if I remember how to do all this. This one we may want to just keep small.
I don't think we have audio. Let's see. On. Why don't we have audio?
I mean, I hear it. What am I hearing?
Go double check it real quick. I think you might be hearing the headphones. Make sure that the splitter is plugged into that. Mic 1 is certainly on.
It's this computer that I'm hearing.
It's the computer?
Yeah.
Then plug the headphone jack in. Like that's going into the computer.
I mean, it's all plugged in. I don't know what to tell you.
All right, well, I thought we had a system. You can't unplug it and plug it back in. Let's see if that does anything.
This doesn't seem to be on.
Well, sorry guys, don't know what the issue
Are
is.
people able to tell us if they can hear?
I mean, I can look at the audio waves.
All of our audio is not going to work.
Let's try this.
The White House is more vigilant and aggressive
There it goes.
about testing than anywhere else in the country right now. In fact, following yesterday's news, we learned that they are testing everyone around the president and vice president daily. Katie Miller tested negative yesterday, and today she tested positive, which underscores just how important testing is. They were able to identify it within 24 hours before she even had symptoms, which helps curb transmission. Imagine if she'd been going to the White House for another week. But get this, you have to listen to this. Listen to how the president talks about Katie Miller's positive test today. It truly seems like he maybe just literally doesn't understand how testing works.
So she tested positive out of the blue. This is why the whole concept of tests aren't necessarily great. The tests are perfect, but something can happen between a test where it's good and then something happens and all of a sudden she was tested very recently and tested negative. And then today, I guess, for some reason, she tested positive.
First of all, she's not a student who is like studying and getting good grades and then like had a bad test. That's not what you're talking about. It's the virus. It's the presence or absence of the virus. You can test negative and then later test positive because between those two, you get the virus.
I don't understand the outrage people have, because I didn't see this clip of MSNBC. I saw people tweeting Trump saying that's the issue with the viruses. That's the problem we have with the test is you could test negative here and then later. And I'm like, that to me seems super reasonable. It seems like what we're finding out, and we'll talk about the UFC in a bit, is that we need to be testing once a day, maybe twice a day. A lot can happen. Either the tests aren't accurate or the tests aren't sensitive enough, or, I mean, if you were quarantined in your house and you came in contact with no one,
Yep.
you probably don't need to be tested that often. But if we're trying to have this idea that we are going to go back out to work and just test people when they come into work, I'm thinking maybe one test a day isn't enough. I mean, you have more insight on the UFC thing because you've probably been talking to our friend, but they're testing over and over and over and over again. They probably have tested harder for the UFC event than anywhere else,
Yeah.
and somebody still slips through and gets the virus.
Yep.
So I don't really know that I disagree with what Trump said in that clip, because I don't know what the rebuttal is. Like, the news anchor just seems to be so mad, and a lot of people seem mad today that, like, Trump is idiotic. He doesn't know what he's talking about. And my takeaway is that we don't know how often you have to test to be confident that somebody doesn't have the virus.
Yeah, I don't know. For this one, I'm kind of on the fence. I feel like that guy overreacted. But when it came to the looking into the injecting of disinfectants, I lean towards that was a pretty stupid suggestion. I recently got in an argument with my mom over that, who took Trump's side on that one, and then she told me not to talk about it.
She took Trump's side on what?
On the injection of disinfectants.
Oh, that was crazy. I don't see how anyone, that just seems silly that he mentioned that. But people are just saying, it sounds like Trump is saying the tests don't work at all.
See, I don't know that I agree with
Trump
that.
is saying that the tests aren't reliable and thus not necessary. I didn't get that at all. I think he's saying we are testing all the time, but guess what? People still are coming down with the virus in between the tests, which seems very reasonable to me.
Yeah, so when I watched it the first time, that's the second time I've seen that clip. When I watched it the first time, what I thought he was saying was testing is not the simple answer, because you can take the test and think you don't have it and then get it within 24 hours. Or maybe you do have it and you don't even know yet and the test hasn't showed it yet. He wasn't really sure. Now, again, maybe the way he said it sounded a little clueless or whatever, but I'm not going to jump on him for that. It wasn't that ridiculous.
Twitter was lit up about it today. Like, that clip I saw over and over and over again. All these people were tweeting it, and I watched it, and I was like, man, what is he talking about? And then when I heard the story, all the people around him were coming down with the virus, and then I saw the clip with literally just like 5 seconds more talking. I was like, oh, wait a minute. Like, this is something I really haven't thought about. A week ago, I thought, if we just test every worker that goes into Amazon that morning before they go in, that seems reasonable. But now a seed has been planted in my head that maybe that's not good enough.
I don't know. I feel like that would be fantastic. And even if you got it and you gave it to a few people that day, everybody would be tested the next day, and then everybody the next day. And so you'd be capturing these pockets of people who get it, rather than like the Tyson chicken where everyone gets
I wonder if a test could even be sensitive enough to see, hey, the guy who went out and got Chipotle and brought it back for the whole staff of the office, brought it in. Like, I don't know if a test is sensitive enough to see the difference between 8 a.m. and 1 p.m. Like, how much could the virus possibly grow in that period of time?
Don't know. I do not know. Let's go to another clip here. What do you want to talk about next?
It's from the same one that he was talking about. There's just something interesting that I saw, and it was the Trump suggests clip.
Okay. So we're moving on now to...
Another thing they'd like to see is a capital gains tax cut, meaning no capital gains. Some Republicans are true hardline Republicans around the table. Not all of them. Some people might say, Louis might say, forget it. But some people would say that a capital gains stoppage, cutting capital gains, getting rid of capital gains tax, they've said that for many years, would be a great thing. The true conservative Republicans around this table, of which there are about seven solid, but I still like the other ones too. But they would say that's music to their ears, right?
So He's basically suggesting that we could potentially completely get rid of capital gains tax. Now, that would be amazing from a taxpayer's perspective, but...
well, it depends where you are. If you're someone that survives on subsidies and government help, as a taxpayer, that could be the worst thing because you don't have capital gains. And anytime they cut taxes, that means the government's going to have less money to help the people that need those services.
Potentially, but we've recently learned that you don't even really need to collect taxes. You can just print the money and the stock market goes up forever. So,
and you can just have that money direct deposited into your bank account. There's really no way he's going to do that.
Yeah,
though.
I don't think that's possible.
He and other presidents have probably talked about this at some time. I mean, the cap gains tax changes every now and then.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's 10
like
and 20%, and then it's 10 and 15%. I think now, do we have 3? It's like 10%, 15%, and 20%?
I don't know.
Is that what it is in the U.S.?
I don't know. I always thought it was 15 or 20, but maybe it is 10.
Well, there's actually a way to pay 0. I think if you make less than, don't quote me on this, but if you make less than like $60,000 a year, you can sell any property or any stocks that you've had gains on that aren't from work. They're not W-2 wages. You can sell any of those, I believe, and have it tax-free up until like $60,000.
Okay.
So there is a 0% cap gains, I believe. Now maybe this is the area that's changed in the last few years. But
No, that sounds familiar to me. I don't know about those numbers, but yeah, there was something that you'd have to pay 0. But I thought for years we've been talking about potentially charging capital gains at standard income tax rate levels.
well, they are for short-term capital gains. If you make profit on something within a year and sell or realize that profit, you have to pay your, what do you call that? Your marginal tax rate or something.
Right. But yeah, when I saw that, I just didn't even take it seriously at all. I just thought, yeah, it's funny he would say that, but
somebody here says the rich getting richer, and I read something a few days ago that said the rich, and who knows what that is, over some threshold, the 1% or the 0.1%, got like 20% richer over this coronavirus thing, or from the beginning of the year. And it just made me think, we had a huge crash of the market, so that's obviously not in their favor, but we've had a high rebound. I would imagine rich people get 10 to 20% richer every year anyway. Like if the market goes up 7 to 10% traditionally, historically, every year, rich people probably have money to where they're realizing that 10% gain. But then really rich people have smarter people to help them make even more money than that.
Maybe so.
So when I heard that the rich got 20%, I don't remember what the number was, but it seemed like a significant amount.
How? Why? How were they able to do that?
I didn't read the article. It was one of those just things you see tweeted and mentioned.
Yeah, and then nobody reads about
rich.
it, and it's like, I don't know, that just seems like crap to me.
A lot of it could be that they didn't lose their jobs, or they're not put on unemployment, or any of these number of things. But I just thought the number seemed low.
Okay, well, I mean, that could make sense if you're comparing it to, the people who have lost their income, so now the average income goes down, and these people, their income remains consistent or something.
One thing to go back before we leave this press conference that Trump did, and where is he doing this now? This seems like it's in a different place. He's not coming in the press room.
I don't know. He's sending that new blonde girl.
She just comes out and talks.
And she's feisty, man. She is not putting up with any crap.
I haven't watched anything she's said yet, but
she's like a little better looking mini Trump. She's also incredibly smart.
Yeah, because Trump's not smart.
No, but you can tell she's quick on her feet, and people try to catch her and get her to make a mistake, and she's just not. But I recently saw a video, I think earlier today, that was quotes she has made negatively about the president over the last 4 or 5 years. She used to hate Donald Trump, but then of course now he's hired her, so
yeah.
She's his biggest fan.
Well, the thought that came into my mind, and it's kind of a conspiracy thought, is, and a lot of it's this book that I've been reading, but Confessions of an Economic Hitman. And it's basically the idea that America, the government, sends out these people to try to force other countries to do something that's not economically necessarily in their favor, so that we can have these contracts in place. And if they don't agree to do that, then we send mercenaries down to try to kill those presidents and put somebody else in power that will do it. And if that doesn't work, then we go to war with them, right?
Okay.
And it just made me wonder, it's been a while since a president's been assassinated. It made me wonder, like, is it within the realm of possibilities that Trump could get coronavirus, or, and this is what the author of the book says, he says he was poisoned after he released his book. He's like, he went out in New York City and had lunch with this guy who just kept contacting his agent through the internet. And he's like, we didn't vet them, but I happened to be in the area that he was in, and my agent was just like, yeah, just have lunch with this guy. And maybe he had some small publication. But he has lunch, and he's like, 2 hours after that lunch, I check into my hotel room, and I go to the emergency room with all this cramping. And they diagnosed him with something that just seemed like he would have had warnings about years before. And the doctor was like, I can't begin to say that you were poisoned. That seems crazy. But he's convinced. He's like, I think I was poisoned. Anyway, we just see these crazy things in North Korea where people are like killed, they're poisoned, and next thing you know, they're dying and all this stuff. And it just made me think, like, since we're doing these diaries and we're throwing stuff out there, I was like, could Trump get sick or something happen to him? Especially as we get closer to the election, if people that were in the opposition party thought he was going to win, this would be the perfect way to disguise a coup. It would be the perfect way to take him out. And then what would happen in America? We have no Republican candidate that would run against Trump. I mean, I guess there are people in the Republican Party that are running against him, but...
So wait a minute. What are you suggesting right now?
I'm just saying, couldn't somebody take out the president? And it would all be hidden.
You're not saying that the pandemic was planned. You're saying since we're already in a pandemic.
Since we're already in a pandemic.
Okay.
No, yeah, I'm not saying there's a conspiracy over the pandemic. Okay. I'm just saying there is a perfect shield of cover right now.
That's true.
To where Trump could get sick and infected naturally. He could get injected or infected purposefully. Or he could die from some other mysterious cause, and like, what would happen?
Yeah, you wouldn't really need to look into it. You'd be like, he died the same way all people his age are dying.
Conspiracy theories would blow up. It would be insane,
Yeah,
but we've had presidents that were assassinated before. Usually it's by a gun. I don't know that we've had anyone that's been injected with something like they do in, Russia and, the KGB and all that kind of stuff. But I don't know, this thought just passed my mind, and I was like, man, what if that could happen?
What if? What if?
A lot of people in here were saying that Trump is already injected with the zinc and the hydroxychloroquine and all those drugs. So like
he's ready to go.
Maybe that's why he's not wearing a mask, because he has this. He's overly confident that he's got the drugs or the antidote.
Yeah, and there's zinc in his orange makeup, so he's good to go. Let's listen to this quote by Obama today. Did you hear this?
They're saying the vice president would take over the presidency. I understand that, but what I'm saying is we have an election. Are you telling me that Mike Pence is suddenly going to be the forerunner against Biden? There's no way he'd win that election. No way. Pence is like the most emotionless, weird dude ever.
That's true, but he also, when Pence speaks, he is so good at saying absolutely nothing that, it's within seconds I lose interest. Every time someone asks him a question and he opens his mouth, he'll just be like, the spirit of the American people joins together, and we as a society can work as one. And I'm like, oh my gosh, they asked you about testing. And so I just feel like he could go up on stage, and you can't really pin him on anything because he never says anything of substance. Biden's over here talking about getting the legs hair swooped down and learning about roaches and having kids sit on his lap. Like, he's saying crazy stuff all the time.
Yeah.
I would imagine people could just look at that and go, well, he's super boring, but at least his mind's working. So maybe he could beat Biden. I don't know.
They're saying President McKinley was poisoned. I'll have to look into that.
All right, let's listen to...
It would have been bad even with the best of governments. It has been an absolute chaotic disaster when that mindset of what's in it for me and to heck with everybody else, when that mindset is operationalized in our government.
So, sorry if you guys couldn't hear that.
Man, I haven't heard from
at
Obama in a while.
I know.
He's been
It's
quiet.
kind of weird that he chose to come out right now, but I think he was speaking with like a close group of friends or something. It wasn't really public, but it was recorded. I don't know. Like
And what is the conversation? He's just really critical of the way Trump has handled
yeah,
everything.
and you know, I would say it's a bit of a chaotic disaster. But then when he starts going into the mindset of what's in it for me, I don't know that I've seen evidence of that personally. I've gotten into very heated arguments with close friends who are like, Trump only cares about his money. He's killing people so that he can get richer. And I'm like, I'm sure Trump's an ass and Trump's greedy and all these things, but I don't think Trump is purposefully killing people for money. And obviously Obama didn't say that directly, but he said, you know, with this mindset of what's in it for me. And
What does that mean, the mindset of what's in it for me?
that's the thing. I don't really know.
What's in it for Obama or what's in it for Trump?
What's in it for Trump is, I think, what he was insinuating.
I mean, it seems like Trump would rather this not have happened, for it to have gone away, for his response to have been the best. And maybe you would say, but he didn't think it was a real threat because he thought it was a hoax. He never has said it's a hoax. He's never said coronavirus is a hoax. But he said other things have been hoax, and then he's put coronavirus in that sentence. That's kind of been the criticism there. But it definitely feels like Trump did not take this seriously.
Sure.
But the people who say Trump's doing all this and allowing all this happen so that he can profit, he may lose this election because of coronavirus. So it seems like he's not doing all these bad decisions when he should be trying to win the election and becoming even richer because he's a president for another 4 years, right? But when I see things like real criticisms, like we don't have the PPP that we need or the PPE that we need, we don't have the masks and all of these things, right?
Yep.
Do you think if we had plenty of masks that Americans, especially a month ago, would have gone out and bought them all and used them? Or we would have just said, yeah, there's masks at Home Depot and there's masks for dentists and stuff. Like, I don't know that the lack of PPE, it's obviously making healthcare harder for the people on the front lines. No doubt about that. But we're in the worst case scenario now, but it doesn't feel like, at least to me, it doesn't feel like it's been that bad in America when I compare it to other countries. We never hit the capacity of all of our hospitals. That's the whole reason for reducing the curve, right?
Supposed to be.
We never hit any of those capacities. We didn't run out of ventilators. All of that stuff never happened. So if we would have had more PPE and masks for the whole public, I mean, there's people in Charleston that I'm seeing, people around the country, they have access to masks to some degree, even if it's one that you could reuse. A lot of Americans aren't wearing masks. We aren't going to wear that.
Yeah.
It's just our mindset.
Yep.
So the idea that he didn't respond well enough by having a surplus of that stuff, it doesn't seem like that big of a deal to me because I don't think the public would have embraced it. But I don't want you to misunderstand me. It would have helped people in the hospitals.
Sure.
They would have had the means that they need. But
Yeah, I mean, obviously, in hindsight, he could have done an endless amount of things better. But probably my biggest critique with the president and all of our leaders, including states and cities leaders, I just want to have a little bit more of a plan. If the plan was, hey guys, this is going to be rough, but if we stay inside for 3 more months, we're going to be able to stockpile this amount of tests, and then when we come out, we're going to be able to test every single American once per week. But if we come out earlier than that, it's going to flare up, and we're not going to be able to stockpile the tests, and we think that, triple the amount of people will die, and here's why we came up with that reason. I would go, you know what? That sounds intelligent to me. Now I feel like I have a reason to stay inside. But when people are like, it's not safe to come out yet, you just have to keep waiting, but they don't tell me what I'm waiting for, now I just want to go to jiu-jitsu class. Let's watch this.
people are saying the Secret Service is now entered into this chat. Hello, Secret Service. Enjoy our coronavirus diaries.
Just over a month. A few days ago, the governor of
Dude,
California
what is going on with the
stated that they
audio?
will commence phase 2 reopening and allow manufacturers and businesses to slowly begin to reopen and resume operations. Elon Musk seemed to be very happy with the state's response up until what happened yesterday. You see,
Can
Alameda
people
County,
out there
which is
let
where
us know if you
Tesla
can hear the
manufacturing
audio,
is
because
located,
we
overruled
can't.
the governor's decision and did not allow Tesla to reopen on Friday due to health concerns. Of course, this is quite frustrating for Elon Musk and Tesla investors, and it seemed like Tesla would not be reopened for a while. Just a few hours ago, Elon Musk tweeted that the company has filed a lawsuit against Alameda County because they acted contrary to the governor's decision. On top of that, he also tweeted that this was the last straw and that Tesla would relocate their headquarters to Texas and Nevada.
All right, we don't need to listen anymore. So here's what basically happened from what I understand. The state of California allowed certain businesses to open back up, including Tesla, the car manufacturer. But then the local county, Alameda County, said that they weren't going to allow it to open. So then Elon Musk comes out on Twitter and is like, this is the final straw. Tesla is now moving its headquarters and future programs to Texas or Nevada immediately. If we retain Fremont manufacturing activity at all, it will depend on how Tesla is treated in the future. Tesla is the last car maker left in California. This was crazy news. And we were talking.
So he's basically threatening politicians by saying, I'm going to take my business away
Yes.
if you do not change the laws on this.
And you know, there were a bunch of car manufacturers, I believe, in California before, but they have since all left because the taxes are too high and the regulations are too difficult to jump through all the hoops and everything. And I've listened to so many people recently who own businesses in California talking about how they're planning their escape route and they're going to go to one of these states that's just easier to do business in, you know, because it's so hard.
Some buddies in my investing group were saying, is this going to be what Amazon did? He is going to say which state wants to have the new factory.
Yep.
And whoever gives us the biggest stipend or gives us the biggest tax cuts, incentives, that's where we'll go. But I would have to imagine, I mean, at the beginning of this video, they showed a picture of the Tesla plant. I don't think you can just pick that thing up and move it very easily.
So at the beginning,
is that the battery factory, or is that for
no. The Gigafactory is elsewhere. I'm not sure. Maybe that's in Nevada. I'm not sure. I believe it's just a car factory in California, and then they also have their headquarters where they're doing all of the, designing of cars and research and development and stuff. So that moving the headquarters wouldn't be as difficult because he's only moving some of his employees. But, you know, if you're one of these high up executives at Tesla, and then all of a sudden you see a tweet from Elon Musk being like, oh, by the way, we're leaving my home of California, I would imagine this is going to anger many of his employees.
Could he have tweeted this just knowing that the restrictions are going to be lifted in the next 7 days anyway, and he will come out looking like this powerhouse who persuaded the mayor or whoever is in charge of this decision? Because that's what's going to happen. It's not like that area of California is going to be locked down for another month. As places start to open up and we get more data, I mean, maybe if it's worse data, you would say, hey, we're not opening back up because we are getting, it is, the second wave is coming. But
so what are you suggesting, that he's saying this, but he's not actually going to do it?
Sure, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That would be crazy if he actually did that. For him to pick up
is that crazier than him selling all of his possessions?
His house hasn't sold yet. When his house sells and he puts his possessions in boxes and moves out, or I guess his possessions come with the house, that's when I'll be like, oh, Elon Musk actually kept his word.
Yeah.
But just putting your house on the market, I mean, I don't know.
That's fair. I mean, maybe he won't do it, but he seems like the type of guy who does exactly what he says he's going to do. Not always on time, but eventually he always gets it done. And we were joking with Mike Kelly. We were debating about this. Mike's a huge Tesla fan. He's got a Model Y on pre-order. And he was like, dude, Elon Musk is winning over the entire conservative side of the United States that hates electric cars and they hate renewable energy and stuff. But Elon Musk is winning them over one tweet at a time by saying that we should all be let out of quarantine.
Is Tesla divided politically too? Like conservatives don't like this fancy car and the battery cars?
Many don't.
Really? I
Yeah.
didn't know this.
Yeah, a lot. I mean, you know.
I know a lot of Republicans and right-wing people feel like global warming could be a hoax or something of that degree. They tie that in together with electric cars, but I didn't know that they said, I won't buy electric car. Electric car. I imagine, like, I'm not super excited about cars anyway, but driving your electric car does make me feel like, man, this is fun to drive.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you know, it's changing. At this point, everyone under 30 wants a Tesla. But I think the good old boys who want the F-150 with the big tires and stuff, they look at Teslas as like the opposite of their lifestyle and what they want. But I could see him winning them over. And then with this Cybertruck thing, I mean, I had been thinking long before the Cybertruck, why don't they make a truck just out of stainless steel and forget about the paint job and just sell it to like people who want to go to work and not scratch up their car and not worry about it rusting? And Elon's the first to do it. So I think that could completely change the type of person that buys electric cars as well. So it's interesting.
Trying to find some interesting comments since we still don't have our super chat yet.
Yeah, I'm hoping, I don't know if, I guess we didn't talk about this. I was talking about it in the chat, but YouTube analytics are incredibly slow coming in. You know, it'll say a video has like 0 views for hours, and then it'll be stuck at 300 views for a day or whatever. On one part of our back end, it said we had 2,500 watching hours, and then on another part of our back end, it still says we have 0.
Yeah. I would imagine with a new channel, especially one that gets a lot of traffic right from the get-go, there's probably things in place to try to make sure everything's okay. Mike Robinson says, Tesla can't even directly sell its cars in Texas. Do you know about that?
Yeah.
What does that mean? They just don't have a store in Texas? You have to go...
So many states have these dealer laws that it is illegal to sell a car direct to a customer. You must sell it through a dealer.
Why? Like, I feel like the way you buy cars, that's one thing I love about Tesla.
I know.
Is the way we buy cars in America is insane. Is it like this all over the world? You have to go to a dealership? If I want this TV, if I want this camera, if I want this laptop, there's an MSRP, and I can go any number of places, and without having to do some calculation on a napkin, I can figure out how much does it cost, and if I have cash, I can just buy it.
I know.
But with a car, it is so complicated. I feel like buying a home is more open than buying a car.
That's true.
And I like that Tesla just says, hey, you can just come to our store and buy it, but...
You can literally buy the car on your cell phone and apply for a loan in like 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Just from going to the website on your phone. That's incredible.
When I bought my last car, you've bought cars a little more often than mine. And then you'll buy one and then sell it and get something else. When I bought my car 10 years ago now, that's how old my car is, I found this website called A Fighting Chance, and this guy teaches you how to navigate everything. And basically, he's like, you never go into the dealership.
Yeah.
You do it all through their email marketing by emailing the guy that does the online sales, and you get them all to fight each other, and then you just simply will pick the best price. And the best price may or may not be above the invoice, depending on when you buy. You might get an incredible deal because it's just a good time to buy a car. You might get a deal that's higher than somebody 2 months ago, but you'll always get the best deal available at that time.
And this was something you paid for.
I think I had to pay like $60 for this packet. And he updates the packet. I don't know, A Fighting Chance. It was like the greatest thing ever. I read all this stuff for like 2 days. It's a lot of material. You learn how the car industry works. But at the end of it all, he's like, you will buy a car in 8 days through email. You'll never once step into the dealership. You won't waste any time. You won't have to play all these games of like, I'm just trying to test drive, and they got your license and all that stuff. You will just find the best deal, and if that best deal is within a radius you're willing to drive to, maybe I pick a car place that's a dealership that's 3 hours away just to see, and maybe they are the best deal, but the second best deal is this one. You'll just contact them and say, I'm going to buy the car from you, and it's done. But it should be even easier than that. It should be like what they do with Teslas.
Well, Tesla, from what I have read, now I haven't looked deep into this, but I think they have some new touchless delivery system now too, where you literally buy it, they park it maybe with the key card inside or whatever, and they tell you where the car is, and you just walk up to the car with your phone and unlock
Really?
it, and then you just get in and drive your car away, and you never have to talk to one of those shady salesmen ever. I mean, for that alone should be a reason to support Tesla. I mean, maybe they will change the car industry and actually make it a legitimate business. Because right now, it's just a scam. Every time I go in there, I feel like I need to take a shower. All right, this next article you've got here is France had COVID-19 in November, hospital says, after analysis of chest scans. So what in the world is this about?
So I think this title, people are a little skeptical of this because they're using chest x-rays to determine if somebody had COVID-19. And I think based on the Plandemic video we've been talking about for the last 2 days, there's some controversy on how easy is it to identify COVID-19 through x-rays. I think she might have been claiming, the doctor, that people are being diagnosed with COVID who clearly don't. But I've had many doctors say that the x-ray scans of COVID patients do show something that's very different than all other pneumonias. So I think there's some controversy there. But basically what France is saying is that they believe some people that died of a pneumonia or had pneumonia, I don't know if they died, they may have made it through, back in November, they're more or less saying that those patients were COVID patients.
I would love that to be true. It's more
Why would you want that to be true?
More of a chance that I had this in January.
Do you know what if that were to be true, if they prove this, it blows such a hole in all of our way of thinking. Right now, we believe that the first cases were in Wuhan around Thanksgiving.
Yep.
And it was towards the very end of December, that's when COVID-19 was named, that China came out and said, we have a problem. And that's when the World Health Organization got involved. If France has it now, in any time in November, then that means, one, China had it well earlier than what we know about, or two, China might not be the source of this virus. Maybe this virus didn't start in China.
Dun, dun, dun.
And China might have just been the first country that actually identified it and said, hey, we have a medical problem going on here. We have an epidemic or a pandemic.
Yeah.
Because is there any reason that France should have had it that early compared to China? I don't know.
Well, just because China discovered it on a certain day certainly doesn't mean that's the beginning of the virus. I mean,
no, but what if these patients in France are days earlier than the patient in Wuhan? You have to put a date on patient number 0.
Sure.
We have patient zeros in countries.
It just wouldn't be patient 0 anymore.
We have patient zeros in countries and towns, but we have we have the real patient 0. Right now, we believe that's somewhere in the Wuhan wet lab, and there's some controversy there about there's some people that weren't associated with the wet market.
Yeah.
That were within the first 15 people or something like that. But I don't know. This article, I've been saying this for months. I think we are going to find that the date gets pushed further and further back. Now we have these hospitals in France that are coming out and saying, and if anyone's in France, I would love to know more from your perspective, because we're all kind of subject to this media bias. Maybe we're reading this stuff because that's what our media wants us to see. But this article it's on the top of the subreddit of coronavirus.
Okay.
So people are debating it and everything. And there is a caveat with the title, the way they wrote it out, but.
Guys, we're going to stick around just for a few more minutes here. If you haven't already, we'd really appreciate a subscribe, just because this is a brand new YouTube channel, and we are struggling to reach 4,000 subscribers right now. We're going to be doing a lot more photography content on this channel as well. Live stuff here, and then obviously continue the
Yesterday,
F-Stoppers
we just
channel.
had our first live Critique the Community.
Yeah.
So if you're an F-Stoppers reader and you enjoy that series, we did a live one yesterday that's on this channel. David says, my only issue with Patrick's current line of thought is COVID should be much more contagious. If it was in France that early, it should spread a lot faster versus Italy or China. That is true, like you would think. but we're also finding that there's like 10 to 20 different strains, and they're saying certain parts of the world have gotten hit with a stronger strain than others. It's all coronavirus, and hopefully we can treat it all with the same vaccine, the same drugs, but they are genetically different enough that we can identify that, say, the West Coast of America has a different strain than the East Coast, and perhaps the East Coast one in New York City is more deadly. We don't know that for certain, but there are things pointing in that direction. So perhaps maybe the people in France had the weakest strain that first came out. So I don't know if that's totally true, but you would think coronavirus at the moment is being sold to us as very contagious, or more contagious than the flu, R-naught value of 2 to 3, something like that. So you would think that France would have a ton of cases if they were the first ones to get it.
All right, let's talk about the UFC. There is a big UFC fight tonight, and I believe the prelims actually start right now on UFC. Is it UFC Fight Pass, or is it on? It's probably on ESPN.
They have made that so confusing.
I have
no idea.
Yeah, I really hate it.
It's not just on ESPN. Like, what else is ESPN even broadcasting right now? Sports are dead.
Yeah, it's got to be on
Shouldn't ESPN be saying, we got all the...
Yeah, I think it's on the ESPN Plus app, and then if you want to pay for the main event coming up at 10 o'clock, that'll be $60, $70.
You can't just go to ESPN on your, on your Comcast?
I don't think so.
Why would they do that? Why would they not do that?
I don't know. I can't even, I feel like, one, I'm either super old because I can't figure out how TV works and like I don't understand technology, or I'm young enough that I don't understand how TV works. Like when you watch my dad using the TV remote and like talking to the TV remote and pulling up CNN and then switching to Fox News and then going over to some Hallmark movie, like he's flipping around and the channels are going up to 1,000, and I'm like, how do you even know what you're doing, Dad? Like,
and you're switching channels, and every time you switch, you're like hitting a commercial.
Yes.
And so you're like, man, I had a commercial break on this channel, but all of my other channels I like are also on commercial break. So I'm just wasting all this time.
I know. And I'm always arguing with them. I'm like, how can you sit here and watch these commercials? Everything you want to watch is on the internet without commercials. You can find all of it. You can watch it instantly without waiting and flipping. And he's just like, nope, I like the flipping. So anyway, my point is I hate ESPN and ESPN Plus and all this. I just want to be able to watch the fight, but we're going to watch it tonight. The big news is that this is the UFC event that was canceled last month. They are doing it in Jacksonville, Florida, which happens to be where my parents live. They're not going to have a crowd. They've been incredibly safe. I mean, all camps are separated. Each camp has their own gym to work out in, their own mats to train on, their own saunas. Every single person involved is being checked potentially every day. I don't know, but like I definitely saw the footage of everybody being checked when they first came into this hospital. So they are being super careful. But
until the moment of the fight. And then they're like, you two guys.
Exactly.
Get together.
So who was the guy? Let's watch this clip here. And
let's hope the audio works on this one.
Please.
What is going on with our audio?
Come to us from the comforts of Nevada, but fight week was...
I'm starting to think that maybe your computer is like recording at a lower volume or something. Now, I have found that since a lot of TV shows are being recorded live on the internet, I mean, we even get this complaint on our channel that our audio is significantly lower than what we would normally put out, because we're always trying to hit like close to 0 decibels. Whereas a lot of these are coming in at like below -12.
Going on in Jacksonville, Florida. And listen, the entire sports world was fired up about what we had hoped and expected, and now apparently will still see. But I'm curious how the mood has shifted in Jacksonville from, really the beginning of the week to where we are right now.
Well, I'll tell you, Steve, the mood had been positive from everybody that I was talking to that was on the ground in Florida. They were very optimistic. I think that mood of getting sports back that we are all feeling, they were feeling it as well. That they had been tested multiple times. As soon as they arrived, they felt like the UFC was taking the necessary precautionary measures. daily temperature checks. You need a wristband just to be in the hotel where all the fighters are. There's no fans accumulating like a normal fight week. So these guys felt really well. And I was even talking to one of them who said, when we found out, when we saw this news, we were sitting in a steakhouse and we had just gotten done saying, doesn't it feel nice to sit in a restaurant? We haven't done this in about 7-8 weeks. We're sitting together as a team having a meal before the fights tomorrow, and then this happens. And as soon as that happened, they were going to have a little bit of a workout. The fighter was going to do a little bit of light training tonight just to get his blood temperature up, his heart rate up before tomorrow, and they immediately put on gloves and masks because the mood has just completely shifted, and now they're aware that somebody in the hotel had this.
So Jacare is the one who had this. And if I remember correctly, he figured out that someone in his family had the virus, and he told the UFC the second he knew that someone in his family had it. And I believe that the nose swab test took some time to come back. I don't know if that's a day or multiple days, but whenever his test came back, he in fact did have it. And so the other face-offs with the other fighters, nobody was wearing a mask or gloves, but then those guys did have a mask and gloves because maybe at that moment they thought he could be infected and they were just trying to be careful. Of course, now that they know the fight is off. But I wonder, this kind of goes back to my argument with you of I would just kind of rather get it. What would happen if Jacare's opponent just said, I don't care about this. I want to fight this guy.
Uriah Faber? Is that who he was fighting? No.
Was it Uriah Hall maybe? Uriah Faber is a short white guy.
Uriah Hall.
I don't know who his opponent was.
I think that's who it was.
Okay.
And I thought I read that maybe it's in the next video clip or it's something I read online that he had already quarantined in the gym. So he wasn't even living with his family.
Oh, wow.
But I just keep thinking, what happens in 2 weeks if they find out that these UFC fighters do get the virus, even if they got it some other way? It's all going to come back to this event because no other sport is happening at the moment, is it? Are there other sports that is like
I said,
F1 racing? Is there things happening in the sporting world?
I have seen some grappling competitions, and they did it without, we talked about this a month or so ago. They did it without an audience, very similar to this. And it was strange to watch.
Earlier in this chat, somebody said that was Bellator fighting tonight. Is that event happening?
I don't know. I haven't heard that.
That would be crazy.
Yeah, that would be.
That seems weird that they would, with all of the opening in the sports world, that you would choose to do your event on the same night that your competitor did theirs.
Yeah, that's a good point. But it could be the day that MMA came back alive. But don't you think it's a little funny though that, these men are able to go inside of a cage and literally try to murder each other, but they can't have a virus? What if he had a stuffy nose? Wouldn't you be allowed to fight then?
Has anyone died in the UFC? In the ring?
No, not yet.
Not yet. That's a good way to look at it. Well, you're trying to kill everybody. You're trying to kill your opponent, but the chances of you actually, and there's probably something still in your mind. It's like, I'm not here to kill you.
Here's my question for you then. What do you think is more dangerous? Fighting one of the greatest fighters in the world for 15 minutes straight, or getting COVID-19?
Getting COVID-19.
What?
If you are fighting one of the world-class fighters, and you too are a world-class fighter, and historically, 0% of people have ever died in the ring.
They have died in other organizations.
I just feel like, again, maybe your argument is all these people are below the age of 40.
Yes.
And it's just a very small, maybe both are very safe. Can that be mutually exclusive?
But my question was, which one is more safe? I would argue that catching COVID-19 is exponentially more safe for a UFC fighter, not for someone in their 80s or 90s, for a UFC fighter, than actually going in and fighting and getting head kicked.
I feel like it's like the straw man or something. You're setting up like this. It'd be interesting to ask the fighters, do you feel more worried about COVID-19 or fighting anyone you fought in your career?
Yeah, that would be an interesting statistic.
I would love to see somehow the UFC require that they fight with the masks, because then we're just that much closer to Mortal Kombat. They look badass with those masks on and all ripped and getting weighed. They look more intimidating too.
Yeah, until they've got like the gloves on, then they don't look. I guess they would have to wear the MMA gloves and not the surgical gloves. All right, what's this last clip that you have here?
Let me read a few. Oh, we could do this.
Brett, do you have any sense of how close the UFC came to just pulling the plug on the entire card? Again, the official line from the Florida State Athletic Commission allowing the card to go on is because the system worked. Are you in agreement with that?
Well, I'll tell you, I don't think that the UFC really closely considered canceling this event. I mean, if you look back on every decision that they made and everything that you've heard from Dana White, they've repeatedly said that, look, we're not saying that, that there's not some risk involved here, but Dana White has taken that strong stance, and his company has then taken that strong stance behind him that says we are going to mitigate that risk as much as possible, but we're not going to shut down. And so that's what they've continued to do. And I think as long as they have the support of a government, a local government, like they do currently in Florida, they are not going to back off on their own.
Hey, last thing for now, any reaction yet from Uriah Hall? Of course, it's his fight as well, that he was the opponent for Sousa tomorrow night. That fight will not take place.
Self-quarantined.
Yeah. I reached out to his camp, and they said they weren't comfortable commenting on it. I think that they're obviously still digesting the news. You know, Uriah Hall had actually moved out of his house. He had been living in the gym for his entire training camp to get ready for this thing. They were excited. They were very, very, they thought he was ready to go, you know, and so then to get this at the very end, I think that he's still processing it.
Yeah, that sucks for him, man, to leave his family so that he doesn't get it, and then his opponent gets it. I would love to see an interview with Uriah. I wonder if he's spoken out on Twitter or something. I'm sure he wouldn't be allowed to fight, but it would be interesting to hear if he wants to or not, don't you think?
Sure. Frederick keeps writing this comment, and if we had super chats, maybe he would pay for this, but I will read it. You guys keep talking about Russia fixing the election of Trump the other day. Have you seen the documentary The Great Hack on Netflix? Have you seen this?
I have not.
I haven't either, but we all need Netflix content to watch.
Yeah.
So maybe I'll dive into that soon.
Somebody in yesterday's video suggested some TV show that's on Hulu that's a date. And it's a Stephen King novel. And it's about basically some guy who learns that he can go back in time, and he's sent back in time to try to stop the JFK assassination. Okay. And it actually, I watched the trailer after that comment, and it looked really good. And I've never heard of it, ever. And I read reviews of it, and people say they loved it. It was so good. So I'm thinking about maybe giving it a try.
What is it called?
It's just a date.
Oh.
So maybe it's the date he got shot or something. I don't know. I'll have to...
Roy G. Biv says, not a bad idea. Maybe F-Stoppers could do a giveaway on the new channel that would encourage more subs. Does YouTube allow us to still do giveaways, remember back in the old days, the wild, wild west of getting subscribers, you could do like a giveaway and you'd have to follow people.
Oh, yeah.
And it was a way to like get a lot of followers.
Yeah, we should do that. I forgot.
Can we still do that?
I think you might be able to.
What would we give away? Would it be like the new R5?
I'm sure people would be very thrilled with that.
You'd have to subscribe to both channels to get the R5. Maybe we could do something like that.
Okay, not a bad idea. Well, Patrick, I think we've got some friends coming over here. They're probably bringing the virus with them, but it's 8:15. People are going to be over here in just a few minutes to watch these fights. I think we need to call.
Let me just look through and see if there's any other comments that are worth saying anything about. People are saying the audio was good on that one. I wonder if just something happened with...
Well, I think partly the issue is you cut that speaker off and it like reset or whatever. So we just need to turn the speaker up. But...
Oh, this is something I wanted to mention. I woke up this morning to something I had feared for a couple years now. I knew this moment was going to happen. Before we moved to Puerto Rico, I had wanted to start a photo series where I went around and photographed legends. And I was like, many of these legends in the music world, I was like, they're not performing, many of them. They're like old and they don't get, the press that they probably got in their prime. And for the longest time, I was like, I need to go do these photo series. And one guy I really looked into was Little Richard. And I found out where he lived. He lived in Tennessee, and I found his house. And I was planning this whole route on like, how can I get in touch with his family, and how in the world could I persuade him to, like, let me come in and just give me 30 minutes of your time and take a portrait of him. And unfortunately, today he passed. And I knew, I was like, man, he's going to pass one day, and I'm never going to get to take this picture.
Yeah.
He was just so flamboyant, and he would have just been an awesome character to photograph.
Yeah.
And in my opinion, you got Little Richard, you got Elvis Presley, you got Chuck Berry, maybe you have a couple other people like Carl Perkins. There's a few people that are like the history of rock and roll. And Little Richard was that guy. I mean, he was an incredible entertainer, really good musician, and he passed away today. I think he was like in his mid-80s.
Do you know of what?
Maybe just old age, but you know, when anyone passes now, you're curious, did they pass a COVID?
Yeah.
But very sad. He was a great guy. His career was, I mean, he, like a lot of these guys, had some weird stories in the back, you know, that happened. But if anyone's interested, just look up some Little Richard stuff on YouTube tonight or tomorrow.
Crispy B says, give away those UGG flip-flops. Man, you haven't worn those in a long time.
I was thinking of wearing them one day and just sneaking it in here, but they are so tight. They're like size 8, and they're just like...
Do they fit Kristen, or does she have bigger feet than you?
They don't fit her, but I think I'm a size 8, and maybe I need 8.5. Okay. They're just tight enough.
You know, I'm a little offended because I gave you those UGG flip-flops, and I just don't see you wearing them that often.
11/22/63.
Yeah, that's the name of the show.
James Franco.
Yeah.
He died of bone cancer.
Okay.
And then, of course, Roy from Siegfried died. He died from COVID.
All right, guys, that wraps up this episode. Thank you so much for watching. Please remember to subscribe. We will see you tomorrow night.